Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Steve Rasner, and welcome back to the Lionhearted Dental Podcast. It feels like it's been a while, but I'm thrilled to be back today with a very special guest that I think has an amazing story. I hope this is a podcast that a lot of newer dentists may be able to hook into and give you, I'm quite certain, a lot of inspiration. My guest tonight is Dr. Desiree Yazdan from Los Angeles. Hi, Des.
Hello, how's it going?
Hey, great. I'm going to tell you my background with Desiree. I heard you about a year ago. This is true story. At a conference, you were giving a lecture, and I didn't know who you were. And I said, "Who's that?" And to somebody in the audience, and they said, "Oh, that's a very successful dentist from LA." Right. And she has amazing practice and all that. And I thought to myself, well, that's nice, but that's not really a story. So I kind of wait, right? I kind of waited till you were done. I don't know if you remember this, and I got you on the outside. A lot of people were trying to get to you and bomb you with a bunch of questions. And I got my chance, and I said, this is what I said. I said, so what is your story? I know she probably doesn't want me to say this, but she has like 250,000 followers or more on Instagram. So there's that's really hard to do. I can tell you this. And so there's some story there, and she told me it. And I'm going to ask Dr. Yazdan today to share her story because it is compelling and inspiring. It's not the story of she was number one in her class and went to Harvard GPR and then got out and joined a practice in New York City and that worked on famous people and actors and actresses. That's not the story. And I think as we unveil it, it's going to help a lot of you who are struggling, or even if you're not, if you want to take it to a higher level. So again, welcome, Dr. Desiree. How are
Thanks.
you?
It's an honor to be here. I'm doing good. One small thing, I'm not from LA, I'm from Orange County.
You're not what?
I'm not from LA, I'm from Orange County.
Oh, okay. I don't even know the difference.
I know. It's like I actually went to school in LA and I thought I wanted to like live there forever and have my life and practice there, but my family's in Orange County. So one day I woke up and I mean this was like after dental school when I was already working in LA and I was like, I just want to move back to Orange County. So I told my parents, I was like, can I live with you until my lease is up with my apartment? And I want to move back to Orange County. And they were thrilled because
Yeah,
one,
of course.
yeah, they're like, yay, she's coming back. And two, they were like, oh, she's literally like gonna stay with us in our house, which like I feel like as a mom now, I'm like, oh, that's like every parent's dream for a while.
So take me back, okay? For again, guys, I'm not going to pretend that I've known Desiree for years, and I haven't. I've been trying to get her on this podcast, which has been very difficult because she has how many children?
Two, but they're small.
Yeah, she
So
has two small children. She still you're a full-time dentist or what?
I work part-time in my practice, but I mean, when you're a business owner, it's,
Yeah.
you're putting in the work whether you're seeing patients or not. So,
Yeah, but
yeah.
I mean, even today her kids had a fever, just like a lot of your kids. When wasn't sure she could do it, and we made it happen, and things happen. She's a real life success story. So I want you to take me back
Yeah.
and tell me the story that you told me about a year ago. So you graduate dental school. Take it from there.
Yes, I graduated dental school. I actually, I always knew that I wanted to own my practice. So I also understood that I didn't understand business. So I was like, oh, I need to learn how to do dentistry in the real world, not 4 hours for one filling, right?
Right.
And like that's how they set you up in dental school. You get like 4 hours to do one filling or one crown, right? And so I was like, I need to learn how to do dentistry. I need to learn the business. And so I decided to work in a different office like almost every day of the week. And a lot of it was also like offices weren't looking for like full-time associates. And so I was like, well, I'll work one day here, one day there, one day there. So I was working like 6 days a week, which is not sustainable, but I did it for a short period of time. But it got so much that I started waking up and being like, oh my God, what day is it? Like, where am I going to? And
Good.
there was like no structure. It was just depended on the day, right? And so,
So wait a minute. I'm going to ask you questions as you go along. So you're in like three or four or five different offices, a lot.
yeah,
Are they, go ahead. How
yeah,
many?
like 5 offices.
Five.
Yeah.
And are they similar? Are they like DSO offices? Are they upscale? What's happening?
Yeah, so at this point they were all DSO and it
Okay.
was not where I wanted to be. And I think the defining moment for me was because I really wanted to do high quality dentistry. And I think in the DSO offices that I was in, I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
they're all bad
Mm-hmm.
and whatever, but the ones that I was in, they were really pushing for like, oh, the crown. I was like, oh, the crown doesn't fit. Oh, that's okay, just seat it anyways. Like the office managers were really pushing, like, oh, we can't bring the patient back. And I was like, but it doesn't fit. It's like it doesn't fit. The margins are off, or like it's too bulky at the gum line. And they were
Yeah.
just like, no, just seat it, like it's going to be fine and blah, blah, blah. Or I'd be like, oh, this patient actually doesn't need an extraction. They could save the tooth with a root canal. They're like, they're scheduled for the extraction. And I would be like, but they don't, they would rather save their tooth, right? So I found it to be very much against my own values and the way I wanted to practice. I think the defining moment for me was
Mm-hmm.
I was I have the picture and my one of my best friends and I like we send it back and forth to each other like every now and then because I left for lunch at one of the offices I was at. And when I
Okay.
was coming back, there was, I mean, poor guy, but there was a man that was drunk, wasted, I don't know, partially homeless, probably half naked, laying in front of the door. Like I literally had to open the door and like move him with the door to like
Right.
squeeze in. And I just, at that moment, I thought to myself, I didn't go through all this schooling. I didn't like stress myself all these years. Dentistry is a long journey. To like be in a setting like this, like I want more for myself. Like I don't see myself in like this type of work for a
Mm-hmm.
long time. And so that day I started reaching out to a couple successful doctors that I knew and just said like, hey, do you know any dentists that I can shadow?
Mm-hmm.
And um, some of them like responded, yeah, I do. Like, here's this person, and they set me up and whatever. And one of them said like, yeah, I do. This person does like really high end cosmetic dentistry. I was like, perfect. That's like exactly what I want to do. And so I went to these offices not expecting an associateship, but more like, hey, can I just shadow? I just want to watch.
Yeah.
So I cut back on how much I was working. So I was like, okay, I'll work 3 days a week. And then the other two, I will work for free to learn the skills of doing cosmetic dentistry. And in those shadowing opportunities, they ended up being like, well, why don't you want to like work here? And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that was an opportunity. I would love to work here. So they kind of were like, okay, well, here's how it's going to work and blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't perfect, but it worked out. And then eventually I did find, because I was like, I'm not going to go back to these other offices, but I did find another office that was in Downey that I loved. I still love it. Like if I didn't have my own practice, I'd be so happy working there still. But I found another office in Downey that I was working at, and I was there, I think 2 or 3 days a week. And then I ended up with
Mm-hmm.
one associateship at a private office that I wanted to be at, and I was there like one day a week. And so that was great. Everything was good. And then the private office I was at, I was only there one day a week. So all I saw was the production was really high, it was fee for service. The business had been there for 25 years. Um, it was a very, very, very successful practice.
Okay.
And so I had like a year into my career, I had kind of started thinking like, okay, how would I open up my own practice? And I talked to my brother about it because he's a medical doctor and he had his own practice. And I was like, well, maybe I could rent a chair. Like maybe I
Mm-hmm.
could build, and he had an extra room that wasn't built out. And I was like, maybe I could put a dental chair there and like rent some space or like rent space in another dental office and kind of like build my own. And I was just looking at other opportunities. I looked at purchasing other practices, but none of them really made sense. And then the lady I was working for was like, well, she kind of was looking to be on her way out. And what she told me was, my kids are older. I want to spend more time with them. I don't want to have so much responsibility with this business. I'm looking for somebody to come in. She actually was trying to sell me the whole business.
So this is 2 years out of dental school, or what?
No, this
Where?
is 1 year out of dental school.
So 1 year out of dental school,
Yeah.
you start out, you're working in several offices, you want more for yourself, you got this epiphany that what you shared, and one of the new offices is this lady you're describing.
Correct. Yes.
Okay,
So
go
I've
ahead.
probably been working for about like 6, 7-ish months with her at this
Okay,
point, but 1 day a
okay.
week. And so then she was like, I want to sell the practice and whatever. So we decided that we would do a partnership where then eventually I would buy the whole thing. And so you hire the attorneys, you hire the accountants, you hire all the people, you do your due diligence. Now she did have a big lawsuit, but she was also on TV. She was very well known. She was super successful. And she kind of was like, hey, listen, because I asked her about that lawsuit. And
Mm-hmm.
she said, well, when you've done as much dentistry as I've done, and you've been on TV for like years, and you've done this and blah, 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 like you're going to have a lawsuit. And that made sense to me, the way that she
Sure.
explained it and all of that. And I was like, okay, like it was just this one. It was very big, but it was one. And so I was like, okay, well, the catch here is, so I bought into the practice. I took out a loan, bought it into the practice. The loan was very expensive, very, very expensive. And I like the first like couple months were fantastic. 4 or 5 months were great. And then
Fee for service, you said? Fee for
for
service.
service. Yeah.
Okay, so just she's in a new practice, fee for service. I mean, you probably at that some point early on, right? We're thinking, I'm in dream world, right? This is
100%. I was like,
Nirvana.
I got so lucky. I like was introduced to this person. I'm riding the coattails of like one of the most successful dentists literally in the country. And she's going to teach me everything. And I'm going to take over this business and I'm going to just fly. And so, I mean, and I had hired a bunch of people to look at all the things to see, like, is this a good decision? Is this not like,
Yeah,
and come to find out she sold me the business knowing she's going to lose her license. And that was her motivation to sell the business. And, a few months after the buy-in is when I started to see all these reports to the board come in. Because before, I'm not opening any mail, I'm not looking at
yeah,
thing. And so she failed to mention all of these things to me. And, I didn't know what I was supposed to be looking for when I was buying in. Like I was not a
sure,
business owner. I was fresh out of dental school. And so I hired people to help me do all of that, and they failed to do their job. Um, and I think the biggest mistake I made there was I hired people that she recommended. And that was the big mistake. Now I know. Now I'm very savvy. But, at the time, I also am like a very nice and honest person. And so I just like what was done to me, I would never think of doing. Like I would never
sure,
take somebody down. And so I just never assumed somebody would want like to just be so careless about like someone else's life and career. And so you know, a year in, she basically lost her license. And so here I am. And she actually never told me because I kept coming up to her and be like, "Hey, what's happening? What's happening? What's happening?" We stopped marketing. We were 50-50 partners, but she was the managing partner. So she made a lot of these decisions that I wasn't able to based off our contract, which had made sense because she was going to be managing partner for a short period of time. And then it was going to be like a true 50-50. But in that time, she was losing her license. So like I agreed because I was like, yeah, I don't know how to manage the business. I'm going to learn, right? Like it all kind of made sense, but it was very scripted for her favor. And so when everything happened, I didn't even fully know. I had gone on a trip with my husband and we were out of the country. And she had sent an email to all the patients that she's no longer practicing dentistry and all these things. And somebody forwarded that email to me. So I was like on the airplane and I
I'm
was like,
sorry.
I know, no, I was on an airplane and you know when you buy the Wi-Fi and
Yeah.
a long time ago, so even the Wi-Fi was worse. And I kept trying to get signal. I kept trying to get signal and like it would come in and out and it was like checking my emails and then my husband got up and went to the restroom and when he came back, I had gotten the email and I had read it and I was like, oh my God, like my my business died. And I was just in tears. I couldn't even speak.
Oh,
Like, what happened? Like I just went to the restroom, like, what's happening? And I was like I couldn't even talk. And then I was like, just read this. And he was like reading it and he's like, okay, so what does this mean? And I was like, she lost her license. Like this is what happened. And so um that was like a mess of a vacation. But he was like, oh, we're already here. He said, and he was kind of like, whatever. That whole thing was a mess. But anyways, so
so when you
uh
get back, what is the literal things that are happening? I mean, is this in the so giving you the cliff notes of the story is the practice she bought that she thought was a superstar practice. The owner of the practice loses their license, and I'm about to ask, I mean, was there news about this? Was the community hearing about this? What was the
yeah, when
story?
I got back, it was on TMZ.
It was on TMZ?
TMZ. It was on TMZ. It was like on the front page of I think the OC Register, like the front page. It was a big deal
Why would it be on TMZ? I mean, that's like for like big
because
stories.
she was
Okay.
really big. She
Okay.
was on TV for a lot of years. She was a part of some really big shows.
Organizations and shows and
Yeah.
okay.
Hmm.
All right. Okay.
And um,
So what's happening? You getting people asking for their records? I mean, what's literally
oh
going
yeah,
on?
like patients, every patient had like been canceling their appointments. The first thing I did was call the team when I was away and I said, "Hey, I know what's happening. I don't want you to panic. You still have a job. I need you
Okay.
to do some damage control for the patients. And I need you to like just bear with me. It's going to be a little bit of a rough road because
Mm.
I knew if I lost the team, then I had no chance. Like the hygienist had been there for 25 years.
Interesting.
Everyone loved
Wow.
the office manager was a little newer, so she was kind of freaking out, but I was like, she was there long enough to understand the business. So I was like, oh, like we got to keep her. What was great is we had a bunch of toxic employees that I was wanted to get rid of, but she didn't let me. So when I took over the practice in that sense, I had to fire everybody because that practice no longer existed, and I rehired only the people that I wanted. So I had a team of one front person and one hygienist and myself. And um, yeah, that was my
I'm
team.
not I'm not trying to freak you out with post-traumatic stress thoughts, but I do want my audience to hear this. And I do want to hear it. Like you get back and I'm picturing what you're telling me. And guys, this is much greater depth than I got from Desiree when I asked her at the convention that I saw her speak at. So I don't even know these details. What because there's people watching us right now, Des, that doctors that are also at a low point. They didn't go have their doctor be on TMZ, but there's other things they're going through. What was your low point? Like
Yeah, I
you're
mean, the hardest thing for me to recover from was I always knew like I'm not a stupid person, but I felt like such an idiot, right? I was
mhm.
like, how could I have made such a big mistake? Right. And that took a long time to get over because, I was like, God, I made such a mistake like at the beginning of my career. Like, how was I so stupid?
I
Right.
mean,
And
were
then
people not calling as much, new patients? I mean, that
there
must
was
have been
there
scary.
was zero new patients. So here
Zero new,
I am now, I'm
right?
stuck with a huge practice loan,
Right.
zero patients coming in, staff that's like looking at me like, okay, you want me to stay, but like, am I going to get a paycheck? Right.
Right. Exactly.
Literally, like I would call the phones from my own cell phone to see if it's still working, to see if because I was
Yeah.
like, literally zero people calling. How is that possible that in a practice that's been around for 25 years, zero people were calling? And then at the same time, the people that were calling were like, I want my records, and they're filing lawsuits.
Oh,
And what they
okay.
tell
Wow.
some of them, not all of them, what some of them are telling me are, I'm going to sue you. I don't know where she is anymore. She's gone. I don't know where she
Right.
is. You're here. I'm going to sue you. And I'm like, I never treated you. And they're like, I don't care. You're the one that's here. And I'm like,
Oh,
My God. So
Oh my
it
God.
was scary, a mess, all the things. Like I don't even know, like it was a disaster.
So
And
there
so,
must have been a point where you said, all right, this is what I'm going to do. This is my game plan. We're good. So I want to hear
so
that.
like in the beginning was a lot of tears. And then and then I actually was like, okay, I need to be smarter about this. Like, so I started to ask for help.
Hmm.
Um, the person that introduced me to her, he's a very, very successful plastic surgeon, very successful, very smart businessman, very, very smart. And so I went to him and he said, I'm so sorry for ever introducing you. Like, I knew she was a little crazy. I didn't realize like this was going to happen. And he gave me some advice of like the next steps. And he set me up with a really amazing attorney and all these things. And so I basically, like, she was still trying to get me to like buy the rest of the practice. And I was like, there's nothing to buy, lady. Like, the goodwill is gone. So that's what I bought. You know, I bought goodwill. It's all gone. Anyways. And then I was like, well, so my goal at that point became I'm going to just try to survive for a year. I have money from, I mean, we made a lot of money in those, like, in that year that I was with her. The practice was super successful. I made more money than, I could ever imagine, especially
Hmm.
at the age of, I think I was like 29 or 30. And I was like, you know, okay, I have money saved, so I'm going to use that to float my business and do payroll and pay the rent and whatever. And I will just try to survive, like keep the doors open. And if I could survive for a year, then I could do it. And so I started thinking like, well, I don't have like no one's coming in. I don't have patients coming in, so I have to market. And
Right.
that's when I started my Instagram. So it's funny because everyone comes to me and they're like, "Oh my God, you have such a big Instagram following." And I was like, I think of it as like I built it out of desperation, right? And like
So you went on Instagram
yeah.
at the point that you're telling is sharing with the audience, like you're not successful yet. You didn't
Oh
even
no.
know. You didn't even know that this would have a good outcome. And you going on
Yeah,
Instagram, right?
yeah, I was like, okay, like it's free. That's what I thought. I was like, I don't have money because
She says,
back
I
then
go on because it's
also,
free. Go
yeah, like
ahead.
so back then the marketing strategies were not social media based. They were pay for print ads in magazines, be on
Right.
TV, be on
Right.
the radio. I don't have money for those types of things. I like could barely even like pay payroll. Like
Right.
so I was like, yes, I don't have a way to market. So for me, I was like, well, Instagram is free. And I saw other people, not in the dental world, I saw other people like promoting like makeup and like some other things. And I was like, well, why don't I do it for dentistry? And so I just started. And at that time, there was no video, it was only pictures. And there was no stories, like there was
Yeah.
no messaging, even. It was just people could comment and like your photo, like that was it. And I just started going on and posting pictures every single day about teeth, about dental knowledge, about like, before and after, like whatever I could do. Like I had no money, but I had a lot of time. And so I spent the time
Are
on
you hearing
social media,
this? She said, I had no money, but I had a lot of time.
right?
This,
Because I
go
wasn't
ahead.
seeing patients. And so I spent a lot of time like creating posts for Instagram, posting them, responding to people, finding people, like commenting on other people's pages, like trying to make friends with people on
Yeah.
Instagram that want a teeth whitening or a cleaning, and so um, it took a long time. It took a year before I got a patient in from Instagram. But after that, uh, it was like I got six in that month, and all of them, like the first one that came in, signed up for like a $6,000 treatment plan, and that's like a big deal for me at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. And then the next one and the next one, and everybody was saying yes. But in this time, I had spent a lot of time learning how to market, learning how to brand myself, learning how to, and I won't say everything I do is like perfect, especially nowadays, but learning how to like build a business, run a business, how to have systems. I started studying like the psychology of sales and reading books about it and like
Mhm.
just trying to understand from people that are were far more successful than I am even today, and just like understanding everything. And so while it was a really terrible time in my life, I also think it gave me so much knowledge and so much time to like not ride somebody's coattails onto the wave of success. Like it made me understand. So I have to say now, there was recently all these fires in LA, which is awful. It's so sad. And I know people that lost their, besides their homes and, their lovely things, um, they lost their businesses. And what that experience has done for me is like, God forbid, my business burned to the ground for any reason. I know I could pick up anywhere in the world and rebuild anywhere.
You
It
know
doesn't,
why? Because you know the power of not quitting. That's
right,
big. Did that ever
right.
occur to you? I mean, I'm serious. At some point, you probably thought to yourself, I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe I need to just give up on this dream. I'm talking before you turned it around with Instagram. Or
Mhm.
did that never even occur to you?
Well, I was so in survival mode. So it wasn't like there was kind of no option of giving up. I had committed to the 1 year
That's
of
because of
like making
you.
it
That's
work.
why that.
Right. And I was like, there was no option. I was like gonna redecide after the 1 year. And so there was no option for me to quit. And when I made it to the 1 year mark, I was like, okay, like I've gotten a little bit of traction. I think I can make it work, right? And then like after like I think after the 2 year mark, I was like, okay, now I went from surviving, now I want to learn how to thrive, right? But yeah, it did because looking back even now, I always think, oh, that was such a great experience for me. I mean, I always worked really hard in school. I always got really good grades. I, made varsity tennis as a freshman. Like I always put the work in to get the
Mhm,
result. But I also had a very fortunate upbringing. Like I left dental school with no debt.
mhm.
I My parents were super supportive of everything that I did. Financially, they always had helped me pre-dental school. When I graduated, they're like, "You're done." But I always knew like I could always go back to them if I needed it. And so I think like having that struggle for myself and not being able to like rely on somebody else. I mean, and think about it, I was kind of newly married and I didn't want my husband to take on this huge loan that
Sure.
that's not fair to him. And we were both at the beginning of our careers. So like he wasn't making as much money as he is today either.
Yeah.
It's I was like, "Oh, I don't want to put that burden on him." But now I look and I'm like, "Oh, like this was so good because I could tell my girls this whole thing one day,
Yeah.
just like tell them like, you have a choice. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm crying, but
Oh, yeah.
you know,
I
it's a good thing for my daughters to see that their mom did it,
absolutely
Part of it.
is. Yeah, Des, not everybody has that DNA to not quit.
Yeah,
But
right.
you said you don't have it, you didn't have another option. That's not how everybody thinks. Some people would just go bankrupt and say, I'm starting over. That to you was not an option. I think
It
it's
was
amazing that
awesome
I
after the
love it.
first year. I think that was the other thing. I had made peace with the bankruptcy, like if I needed it. I had talked to my dad about it and he was like, "Yeah, I don't think you should do it and whatever." But I had made peace with like because at some point
Yeah.
that was one thing that my dad helped with too. I became like, "Oh, I'm going to sue her and get all my money back and whatever." And my dad was like, "Yeah, you can do that, but you're going to be in this lawsuit for years. It's going to be super expensive. You don't have the money to like fund yourself for it. But even if you do, like, what is that going to do for you? Like, you can make that money back by learning how to
Hmm.
build your business. And so, like, you can either put your energy into building your business and like enjoying your marriage and having a family.
Right. Your dad's smart.
Yeah, or you could spend it like fighting tooth and nail and not even get anything. He's like, she's probably hid all her money anyways. Like, who knows like what she's done, and like she knew this was coming, so he's like, if it was me, I would take my energy and I would focus on positive things and not. And so I was like, okay. And
Your
so
dad should start at Instagram.
my dad my dad is brilliant. My dad is
I can
fantastic.
tell.
But he gave me that advice and it made sense. And it was a hard pill to swallow because I was like, no, I have to get like this has to be made right. But ultimately, like he was right. And I'm glad I had that convo with him.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Where are you today, first of all, in time out away from the story you just shared? Is it a
Yeah.
year ago, 2 years ago? What is it?
Oh my goodness. Like 10 years ago.
Oh, it's 10 years ago. Yeah. Can you imagine how powerful this must have been to her to have that emotional reaction she just had? I thought it was like 3 years ago. I didn't know
No,
it
no,
was
no.
10. So
Maybe it wasn't 10, maybe it was like 9 or something.
whatever.
It's
It's
a
not,
long time ago.
yeah,
Yeah, it
sure.
wasn't, it's not fresh.
So you've had years and years of growth and success at this point, correct? Am I right
Yeah,
or not?
and like I I love to talk about this because it doesn't come easy. I work basically from 10:30 to 3 every day, or not even every day, 3 days a week.
Hmm.
And I spend the mornings with my kids. I spend the afternoons with my kids. And I have a practice that allows me to make what I want in it and travel the world with my family when I want
Mm.
and support my kids in the life that I want them to have, right? And I'm proud to have built that. And so when I share that, it's not a brag.
I know.
I want it to come from a place of like, if seriously, if I could do it from the place that I was at, like literally anybody can do it. Like no matter what you've been through. I mean, there's kind of nothing worse than your entire business going to the ground and you not having control over it and everybody in the community knowing about it and you being tied to it. Like you walk around the halls and people stare at you like
Sure.
bad, like because I was associated with her, it was like I was the devil.
You were
And
guilty by
yeah,
association.
and
Yeah.
people actually like a couple months in would come to me and be like, "Oh, I'm sorry that I hated you." Like they would tell me, I'm like, I didn't even know. But they're like, I'm sorry
Yeah.
that I hated you. I never gave you a chance. Like she was such a terrible person, and I just assumed that you're the same. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm hated in this entire community, and I don't even know. Like I've never even met these people. I've never had a conversation with them, but they all know me and they all hate me just because of,
I'm
and
just the way you talk. It's killing me.
no, but it's the truth, right? So I guess what I'm saying is like it's so opposite now, and people have gotten to know me and they like love me and I love them. And it's like if I could do that and recover from that and fairly quickly. I mean, it did take like, a minimum of a year, like I said, plus some, right? I mean, the practice growth is different, but like it took a long time for things to get better, but like it was also like very much my mindset of like, well, I'm just gonna try it out. Like if I have to file for bankruptcy, then I have to file. Like I just made peace with that and then I
Sure.
just moved forward. And I think dropping that made because like the fear of filing for bankruptcy was like so big. And then once I made peace with it, it just helped
Hmm.
me like move forward.
Before I ask you about takeaways
Yeah.
for Dennis, which I'm going to do, I do want to say something to my audience. I don't know if I've shared this with you guys before, but I'm listening to Des, and you saw the emotional reaction she had, and this was 9 or 10 years ago. And I know that a lot of dentists out there know me because I have this fee for service, amazing practice in this really difficult part of the United States where it's once rated by USA Today as a second worst place to live. And I had many, many years of success, but I had back operations and things happen in a career. And I went through a period 20 years in, and part of it was Des. I don't know. I never obviously talked to you about this because I was of the mindset that if I could borrow the money as my career evolved to have a bigger building, to have a $180,000 CBCT, at the time, that's what they cost 12, 15 years ago. Um, I I would do it. I never was of the mindset. I was always okay with paying the interest. And this is an important point.
Oh, I agree.
And I had a couple houses, I had nice cars, and I was making a lot of money, and I certainly was bringing in a lot of revenue. And on the surface, I looked like this amazingly successful guy. I'm serious. And I got to the point too where all I lost was about 3 to 4 months out of my practice. I think a guy that's been in practice for 20, 25 years should be able to sustain that. But I got in trouble financially because of that. And I went to a bankruptcy attorney. And I can't tell you the terror. Listen to me. I called it the terror of thinking of how are you going to pay payroll next week, right? You've been in practice now for not a year or two. I would understand, or even 5 months. I would understand that. Be in practice for 10 to 15 years
Yeah, it's so
and
much worse.
get yourself in a, and in your case, you had that giant loan that you took to
Yes.
buy this practice,
Mhm.
and nobody is there to rescue you. I mean, certainly
And
in
it's
my case, it was like,
good. Like the loan payment was so big, like nobody could rescue me. Like it was,
yeah,
there was nothing to, I mean, it was like, I don't know, sell your house. Like that's the rescuing, right?
right. And that's why you always hear me tell you to live modestly if you can in those first 10 years. I mean, live below your means at the house you live in and the car you drive. It's not because I'm an old fussy fuddy does he it's not even a word, fuddy duddy. It's because it everybody I know that's successful had the discipline to do that. And sometimes even if you do that, it doesn't go your way because in Desiree's case, she bought a practice that was she thought going to be the key to her success, and she overcame it. My takeaway is that is terrifying. It's I remember I went through it for a year. Every 2 weeks, I was
Oh,
wondering, how am I going to make payroll? This is after a really successful part of my career. And thank God I was able to turn mine around like you did. So
mhm.
tell us, you mean, I know you're out there and you speak now and you even coach other offices. I think that's awesome. What would be your major takeaways of what happened to you or your recommendations to young dentists that are out there right now?
Well, if
I know
you're
it's a big question. I get it,
Oh,
but
yeah. I mean, there's so many layers to it because it's like, okay, if you're thinking about having a partnership with somebody, like think twice maybe and do your research really well. Don't rely on other people to help you. That's one. And then really like you can really do anything that you set your mind to. And I think that's what this experience taught me is like I actually really can do anything because from that I created my Instagram. Like I was like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, grow an Instagram following to market my business. And I remember everyone telling me, why are you wasting your time doing this? And I was like, I don't have anything else to do. This is what I have time to do. So this is what I'm going to do. And, everyone was like, oh, find other ways to market and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, go to these networking events. It's not, I'm a very much an introverted person. So like going to networking events and talking about my business, like was not something I wanted or would be good at doing. So being online and like marketing was easier for me. And
mhm.
so I think just knowing like you can do anything truly you can, even now, like I didn't start off working, 4 hours a day. I started off working 12, 13 hours a day and seeing patients. And that's what I thought was going to make me successful of like being available whenever. There were no boundaries. If someone called me at 11 p.m. or 3 a.m., like I'd be like, yeah, sure, no problem. I'll come see you. Like it was
Yeah.
so, and
And how long did that go on for? I'm curious.
for way too long, like 5, 6, 7, I don't know, long time.
Okay.
And until I had my first daughter, really. And then I was like, I just like I can't do that anymore. And I feel like my team that was with me before, they're still like, oh, I wish that you could come in at 6 a.m. like you used to. And I'm like, yeah, that was honestly like 8 years ago. Like 7 years ago. Like that's not happening anymore, like you got to drop that. But really just knowing like when I had my daughter, I was like, okay, well now I need to like, I think my first thought was I can't work this much. And I actually had a conversation with my husband of like, hey, I'm not going to work this much and,
Mhm.
I'm not going to make as much money and like, is it going to work for our life and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, whatever you want to do. He's very supportive. And then I like after I left the conversation, I went upstairs and I was like, why do I have to make less money just because I'm working less? Like, what if I could make the same amount or more and like work less? And so that is what I set out to do, and I did it.
How did
And
you do that?
well,
associates and stuff?
Well, no, not at first. Not the first year that I did that. Now, yeah, but not before. I cut my work hours. I got more efficient with the way we were scheduling. I set up different systems in my practice to help with that. I organized my time better. So like when I
Mhm.
was in the office, I wasn't stretching it out. Like I wasn't, for example, ending at like 4 and then staying there till 6 wrapping things up. Like I had a system,
Sure.
delegated more things that I didn't need to be doing. I mean, it's like so many things. And actually, like the way that I started talking to patients about treatment and selling treatment, like everything changed. And I learned about urgency and scarcity and all of these things and started like training my team. And I created systems for everything, literally, like how I do an exam, like when my office manager needs to come in, like what every little thing was very orchestrated so that we could be the most efficient with our time and still do high quality care because that's one thing that I think like my husband is always like, yeah, you could just open a bunch of locations and you have a working model and blah 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 and I'm like, no, but if I'm not doing the work, like the quality is going to go down, and I want it to be this way and I want the patients to feel a certain way and so like that's like my thing that I always hold on to and like my husband's like, no, it'll be fine and so anyways, going off a tangent here, but and that's what I teach other dentists how to do now, how to make more, work less.
You know
And
what's interesting about that comment, Tony? I want to share this. So you can't hear her, right? Yeah. So she's talking about she became more efficient and did things. And I'm telling you this, it's just an interesting thing I want to bring up. Like the way I got to, if I came into this office with no patient schedule, and I'm not kidding, and I told my staff I was coming in today, and we deliberately didn't schedule patients. If I allowed it, I would find myself busy doing BS all day. Like a patient would call with something that we could have handled on a different day. But if I allowed it, I've seen this. I would be if I came in for one patient, if I allowed it, I would be here till 5 o'clock at night, 6 o'clock at night.
a
But
hundred percent.
what I discovered is this. When I started taking CE, so I used to work 5 days a week, and I had to take off a Friday, sometimes even a Thursday. I started to see on those weeks I worked 3 days, I was just as productive as the 5 days. And I would say, well, how did that happen? And how it
Mhm.
happened is focus. I knew I was going to be off those 2 days. So I spent more time thinking about what I was going to do on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of those days. And
Yeah.
and so I started doing it all the time, like you did,
Yeah,
right?
it's really about like the boundaries too, what you said, because there are times that I would, let's say it was even now, but they know now. But like for example, let's say I
Yeah.
start patients at 10:30,
Mhm.
but I get to the office at 10 to do some
Right.
admin work and whatever.
Right.
They used to come in with tons of questions, and I would be like, I'm not here. And they're like, what? And I'm like, I'm not here till 10:30. You can ask me, you could come, you could open my door at 10:30. I'm not here. And
Right.
they thought it was the weirdest thing ever. And they would even make comments during meetings, well, you're not here until 10:30, so we can't ask you. And I said, you're right. I said, there's a lot of other things to do in the business other than treat patients. And I have to make sure I get those things done. Like those things help you guys get paid. So don't
Right.
like, try to make me feel bad about that, right? Or like they'd be like, well, we want to communicate with you, but you're just not available until this time. And I'm like, you're right, I'm not, and just like holding on to that and the discomfort of like,
Yeah.
because you
It's
want to
hard.
people please, right? But like holding on to the discomfort of not pleasing people and giving them what they wanted and sticking to the boundaries. But now they know, like I walk in, maybe 30 minutes early, maybe an hour early. Like my ankle was broken, so I wasn't able to like exercise. I couldn't drive the kids to school. So my husband would drop off the kids and then drop me off at work. And sometimes it'd be like an hour and a half early. And now they don't even come bother me. I was just like working on other stuff, doing other
Sure.
things. Like they know, like, oh, she's not
Yeah. You know what
technically.
I do? If my door's closed, don't knock. I mean
Yeah.
it. If
Oh
it's
yeah.
open, it means you can come in and ask me stuff. Same
Yeah.
thing. It's so cool. So what is your final thing? Like, I know you're out there, you're coaching, you're doing stuff. Any final thoughts? Anything you would tell Desiree's younger self when she got out of school, or a young associate?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I could tell people is your mindset is the most important thing. Because if you are doing all the things and you're trying to make your business successful and you're still struggling and all of that,
Mhm.
how you think about your situation is the determining factor of if you're going to succeed or not. If you are always a victim to everything around you, right? Like then, and I'm not saying things don't happen. Like I was just talking about people I know that had their business burned down, like their whole practice is gone. And also the homes around those practices. So
Are
like
gone.
even
Yeah.
if you rebuild, right? But how you think about that scenario or any scenario that happens to you is determines like your success. And so if you could learn how to have a stronger mind and even just give equal airtime, like you're going to have a ton of negative thoughts that come in, like, this is so hard. I've been doing this for years. Like for you, for example, at the 10-year mark, how is it possible that I can't pay payroll? How is this
Yeah.
happening? Why did I let myself, right? If you just give equal airtime of like, okay, but I've been a business owner for 10 years. I can figure this out. I figured out a lot of hard things up until this point.
Yeah. So good,
There-
Des. Yeah.
Like whatever goes, I always know like anything that goes down will come back up and anything that goes up will come back down, right? So like even when my practice is doing like the best it's ever done, we're having so many like amazing months back to back to back. I know it won't stay there forever. I mean,
Mhm.
practice growth is not like this, right? And so I enjoy it while everything is up and my life is perfect and my kids aren't sick and everything is going smoothly. And I also know like, okay, I something's gonna happen, aka I break my ankle, whatever, right? Like it just
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Like things happen and life happens and you can't control it, but you can control how you think and like what airtime you give to what story. And so I think
That,
people's stories about themselves are super important, right? Like sorry, just one last thing. My story
no,
about
go.
myself, like in the beginning stages of when all this happened, was like, I'm so embarrassed. I can't believe how stupid I was.
Mhm.
How could I let this happen? Like those were constantly what I was thinking. When I started to become like actually get my head above the water,
Mhm.
all those things made me sink. But when I started to actually like breathe again was when I started to be like, okay, there's got it. Like other people have had certain situations similar to this and they've made it. This person is super successful. If they could do it, I could do it. All I need is like, two patients for this procedure to be able to like pay payroll and rent this month, right? And so when I started thinking in different ways, I started to see the results of that because I was focusing on different things. And I let that story of myself go of like, poor me, I can't believe this happened. How did I let this happen? Into like, well, now she's out of my way. I ended up with a beautiful practice in Newport Beach in one of the best buildings that you can get. And I learned what not to do in business. And, like if she could do it, I could do it. So it's just how your story about yourself is super important.
Well, I know why you have 250,000 followers. I don't know if you do. I do. And the reason is because you're real and you're likable and you're genuine. And not everybody's like that. Not everybody on Instagram's like that, as a matter of fact. And it's very, very obvious that's who you are. So I know that your story is just starting, and it is. And I hope that my audience got as much out of it as I did. Especially, I love what you said at the end about mindset. It is everything. I mean, you want to be a victim, or I always share this story, Tony. I don't know if I've told you about it, where I'm driving a car. It's a true story. It's not a big story. I'm on my way to work here, and I live an hour away, and I hit an ice patch on a big highway. It wasn't a back road. And it was one of those ice patches that caused my car to do a 360. So I'm literally spinning around my car, and there's cars coming and going. You
Yeah.
know what I was thinking in my head? As I'm turning, I'm
Like
not,
this is not going to get killed on this
no, I'm
road.
thinking, how am I going to get to work when this comes to a stop? Because I know it's going to crash, but I wasn't even considering the fact that I would get injured,
Oh my
or
God. Yeah.
considering the fact that I would call out of work. I was thinking, how do I get to work after this? What do I do with the car? Why I'm going around in a circle? And I did. It crashed. I got it towed. I don't remember back then. It was 15 years ago. I didn't have Uber, but I got to work. I got to work late, but I finished. It's a mindset, man.
Yeah.
It always is.
Yeah.
And you need that. You need to remember that at your lowest points. I'm feel fortunate to have you as one of my guests. And
Well,
maybe we'll do an update a year from now.
sure. Yeah, whenever you want.
So people will know how to get them to contact her.
Contact her, yeah.
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 Come around and talk to her for a minute.